This is September 8th, 2008 at 4:13 in the afternoon, and we are interviewing Todd Rosenfield, who served in the United States Army from February 1990 and is serving in the reserves until October 2009. This is taking place in Albany, New York. June and Ken Hunter are conducting the interview. Please tell us your full name and when and where you were born.
Yep, Todd Rosenfield, and I was born in Framingham on December 7th, 1970.
And what did you do before you entered the Army?
Well, I first came in the Army in 1990 as a college student. I got out in 98 from the reserves and came back in 2004 because of the war. And when I came back in, I'd already graduated from college and I was working in a professional capacity and came back in as a 38 Bravo Civil Affairs operator.
Okay, now tell us about your enlistment process and basic training.
Oh, I went into basic training in 1990 in Fort Dix, New Jersey, many moons ago when I was like 19. Did my training, drilled with my reserve unit. It was basically just regular, relatively non-wartime environment and a different mood, a different sense of purpose and mission. And then when I ETS'd in 1998, having been out for a while in the inactive reserves, I didn't expect to come back in the military. I had no idea I'd ever come back to the military until 2004 when I decided to re-enlist then.
Okay, now you mentioned the term ETS.
Oh, I think that's expected
expiration,
time of separation or something.
Certainly.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, ETS is an acronym.
It's a term for when you're getting close to being separated out.
Yep.
So then you had decided to go back in. Did you have to go through all this training you'd had several years
No,
before?
I didn't have to go through all the training again, and I came back in. I came back into a civil affairs unit. My goal coming back was, by then I was a little older in life. I was trying to do more of the humanitarian assistance, infrastructure, roads, local government. So I thought that would be a good continuation of somewhat of my professional background, and then certainly something that would be a good fit for me philosophically with what I wanted to do in the military.
Now, you didn't happen to say what your professional background was or your college study.
Sure. I graduated in '94, bachelor's in communications, and then I worked in financial operations and financial management, sales operations and sales administration for a number of years, and with many large publicly traded companies like Shell Oil and General Electric, and then decided to re-enlist when I was working with a medical company in the Boston area when I came back in 2004.
And so now you've re-enlisted, and what did you train? Did they give you training for something in the service?
I took some additional training. I trained with civil affairs. I did specific training on guidance of what a civil affairs operator does in the school environment, which was the humanitarian assistance, sewage, water, electricity, academics, trash, fuel, and housing, SWAT FH. And it basically helped us deal with internally displaced war people. It trained us to deal with situations of combatants and non-combatants, and how to help basically keep the local non-combative population from being exposed to disease or war, and help to keep basically the good people separate from the bad in terms of the level of danger they were exposed to.
So you were training sort of specifically for the war in Iraq?
I was trained specifically for the war with Iraq. I was training with both of the instructors I was with were both Iraq War veterans, and I was training specifically for that type of environment, either Iraq or Afghanistan.
Where did this training take place? At what kind of a military post?
It was at Fort Dix, New Jersey. The training took place when I came back in. I was trained in Fort Dix, and their civil affairs school there. But civil affairs under USACAPOC, which is Civil Affairs Psychological Operations, is headquartered out of Fort Bragg as part of the Special Operations Command, and then civil affairs as for functional terms is all done by the reserves. So there's very little active civil affairs in the military. It's mostly reserve units, and they're very highly deployed. They're on a very high deployment tempo right now. So.
After the school, what happened? Where did they send you? How did you get together to go overseas?
Yep, after the school, I was assigned to a unit. I was asked to get deployed as an individual augmentee to a battalion that was out of Phoenix, Arizona, Bravo 492. The unit in Phoenix, Arizona was pretty much a ghost unit. Very few of us from the battalion had met or known each other. We were all individual augmentees or fellow soldiers that were taken from the inactive reserve and reclassed and sent over as civil affairs operators. So in my CAT-A team, 4-man person civil affairs team, where we got embedded, I was with a Navy officer. We had a lot of inter-branch augmentation. A Navy officer, which was very unusual because usually Navy and Air Force personnel were based out of the bases and they didn't leave the wire a lot. And I had a former Ranger who was in Afghanistan and Iraq, and I had a former truck mechanic who was in Afghanistan. And both of those two people were taken from the inactive reserves. They were both, I think, back in college, getting on with their lives, and then they were recalled and put back into this battalion that then staged at Fort Bragg, was trained, and then shipped over to Iraq.
How did they ship you over there? Did they tell you how long a tour it was going to be?
I thought it was going to be a year. My orders were for a year plus to include training and so forth, so I was pretty certain it was going to be at least a year. We staged at Fort Bragg. Some of us trained anywhere from 3 weeks to 6 months, depending on how quickly we got added to the unit and how fast they had to get us up to speed. We staged there, and by February we were getting ready to ship out, and then left and through Kuwait. We were there for only a few days, less than a week. We trained for 2 weeks at Camp Bering, then we went to Ali al Salam and we were there for less than a week, and then from there we shipped right up to BIOP, Baghdad International Airport. So we trained up in Kuwait, went to another base, an airfield in Kuwait, Ali al Salam, and then we shipped up to Iraq from there.
What was your impression when you landed in Iraq?
Most of the time you travel at night for safety reasons, so it's usually pitch black when you get into BIOP. We were loading a lot of equipment. It was very chaotic and confusing. We're trying to figure out who goes where, what happens. We were going to fly up the night before, but because of aircrafts taking enemy fire, they were being shot at by, I think, small arms fire at Baghdad Airport. They decided to stage us for the next day. We went into BIOP at night, again, confusing, chaotic, and then we had less than maybe 5 hours sleep our first night. We stayed over and got up, went to an award ceremony for the battalion and we were replacing, and then the battalion we were replacing carved us up into teams, or our battalion carved us up into teams, mirrored us with the existing battalion for what they call RIPTO, Relief in Place, Transfer of Authority, and we were on that base for less than 24 hours before me and some other members were pushed out to a small base to be on what they call a CAT-A team. It's usually a small, approximately 4-person team, and then we get embedded in the maneuver element, usually in the maneuver element's battle space.
What was we often think of it as a hot, dry, dusty country, is it?
No,
You saw?
well, Baghdad was very humid. It reached up over 130 degrees in the summer, and it was very humid. We were right on the Tigris River. I was in an area in northwest Baghdad called Katamia, predominantly Shiite population, and it was extremely humid. So it wasn't a dry heat. It wasn't what I thought of as a traditional desert environment, just because it was so urban, and it just had a different topography, I think is the right word. There was just a lot more tree lines and trees in our particular area of operation, our AO. And then further in some of the other areas, it could be more open and spread out in the desert, or it could be more agricultural depending on what area you were within Baghdad, or Baghdad area, surrounding area.
What kind of quarters did you have over there?
I had we belonged to a hard structure. We replaced Saddam's old intelligence offices in Katamia. It was called Fob Justice, and it was also called Camp Banzai. It was where they hung Saddam Hussein. It was one of the only legally functioning gallows in Iraq. So it was the area where they hung Saddam. It's called Camp Banzai or Fob Justice. We were in a hard structure, 2 floors, a basement, and then the roof, and we had a shower trailer and a latrine trailer. A pretty small base. Was geographically, you had to run the whole perimeter of the base if you were lucky to even register a mile if you're trying to do your PT test and so forth. And we were in a small area in terms of you only traveled a short distance before you were right in the heart or the sector of the civilian population.
For protective purposes, what kind of equipment did you have? Special body armor?
Yep. I had a regular, the new vest just came out while we were in country, but we still had the older vest with the side sappy plates. The vest closed like this instead of the newer ones that come over your head. They were probably approximately 50 plus pounds. With your battle load, which was at least probably a minimum of 210 rounds of your M4, which is the modified M16. I had an M4, I had a 9mm Beretta, and then we had our helmet, our Kevlar. Some people carried radios and crew serve weapons, and then you had your uniform underneath your boots and your ACU fatigue uniform.
To dispel the beliefs people might have viewing this, thinking, you mentioned being civil affairs, they might think that you sat in a protected courtroom atmosphere.
Yeah.
What was the daily routine like?
Well, people sometimes think of civil affairs as like public affairs, and unless you're in a headquarters unit, there's probably no unit more exposed on a day-to-day basis to the local population than a civil affairs Cat A team. I did 240 combat missions. I led 30 of them myself, and we were moving in amongst and about the population. And sometimes when we supported a maneuver element, we had to move off to that maneuver element's headquarters for 3 or 4 days at a time in small remote outposts, smaller bases as well. So we spent a great deal of time outside with the population and the government leaders and so forth.
Now, did you have to try to befriend the regular civilian population, or?
You had to try to befriend basically everybody that was not considered someone you're trying to kill or capture. I mean, we were under the obligation of trying to treat everybody as humanely and decently as possible, to a point where it caused a lot of duress on us personally as soldiers, I think, to try to extend so much kindness and courtesy, but also be able to keep your guard up and be ready at any given moment to be attacked and respond to an attack. So that's kind of how I would put it.
And can you tell how you tried to befriend them? What did you do to?
We ran medical operations, local government. We would help them with projects. We would pay to try to get people employed, pay to give them money to pick up trash. We would we build roads, we'd fix schools, we'd repair air conditioning units, we would provide generators for fuel. We would basically try to flood an area with cash to try to keep people happy, try to keep them from getting festering and resenting us and wanting to attack us, as well as it's such a decrepit, poor area, we were trying to restore some of the infrastructure that was falling apart.
And do you feel that most of the people were happy to receive it or not?
I think they're a very different culture than us. I think they'll always view us as infidels, invaders, and occupiers, no matter what we do.
Mm-hmm.
They asked us to win their hearts and minds, but I used to say they love our money, but they hate our guts. Unfortunately, there were some people that you could work with and trust, and they touched you. Most of the people you felt could just as soon see you dead and dragged to the street.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel you were adequately informed as what you would have to do when you went out on a mission?
I think there was a code we lived by. We were supposed to meet with a lot of people, and whether they were government members or former high-value targets, people we knew were bad people that were on the lam that went off to Iran, knowing that we were trying to capture them. They got tipped off by the Iraqi army, the police, and then they would come back. Sometimes I would know I was going to meet them. Sometimes I'd just show up in a room and they'd be there. I had to shake their hand and basically come up with some way to bring money to that guy's pocket to keep him from trying to attack our soldiers.
Were there times when you had Iraqi military men with you?
Yes.
What were they like? How did they operate? Were they trustful? Were they trainable?
I never trusted anyone. I couldn't. It wasn't a luxury. Some of the people that worked a lot with the military and national police teams trusted some of them. As a whole, many of the top people in the Iraqi police and the army also double-headed as militia leaders, and it wasn't uncommon to see an army officer being handcuffed and have a bag put over his head and being walked off to the holding facility because they had realized he was involved in an attack on a U.S. soldier. That doesn't mean they were all bad. They had to survive. A lot of people rode the fence over there thinking, you know, you guys are going to be gone and I'm going to still be here with my family, and we don't want to be tagged as collaborators with the U.S. So I tried to understand their minds, but I know that to try to trust them would be a falsely lull you into a very dangerous situation. That's how I felt.
We've heard of the term rules of engagement.
Yeah.
Could you explain that to us?
Rules of engagement were created by high-level officers that still live in yesterday's world of soldiers play by rules, they wear uniforms, they don't attack and ambush you in front of schools where innocent people could get killed when you return fire. Rules of engagement basically say that now you can only return fire if you positively identify a target. Your rules of engagement make you try to escalate as much as possible non-lethal reactions, whether it's just a pen light or firing in the air. Those rules of engagement, again, to me, are all well and good in World War II when you're in trench warfare and people wearing uniforms. When you have people running around with no uniforms that adhere by no rules, the rules of engagement simply tie you down, browbeat your soldiers, and make it more dangerous to try to respond, I think, in a matter of preservation and survival.
I assume that during your tour over there, that it was not an easy matter, that there were times when you feared for your life, and there were times you were shot upon, and there were times that you may have witnessed or yourself been involved in one of these roadside bombing attacks.
Yeah. I got my combat badge after only my 6th day in country. We just did a humanitarian mission where we gave a neighborhood in Haria, which is northwest Baghdad. We ran a health clinic. Army doctors saw the people there. They gave them food and medicine, blankets and water. We spent all day in blistering heat helping them out. Less than 20 minutes after we left that area to return to base was the first time I've ever experienced an ambush. We got hit. The Iraqi army checkpoint was deserted, meaning that they knew we were driving into an ambush, and they deserted the post to avoid being shot in a crossfire. The town, that sector within that block, knew we were getting ambushed because the street, which was usually crowded, was completely deserted, and there was duct tape on the windows indicating that they were expecting a roadside bomb, and they would tape the windows so that the concussion didn't destroy their windows. We had a 4-truck patrol. The second truck got hit with the roadside bomb, and then we fought automatic weapons. They charged us. They charged our trucks and shot at us from fixed positions, and our gunners returned fire. And we killed some guys that day, and we got through. Thankfully, none of our guys got killed.
Where do you feel that we're getting the weapons from the opposing forces?
They're using mostly AK-47s. That's probably the most common small arm weapon in the world. They could be coming from anywhere, anyhow. Saudis and Syria could be backing the Sunnis. Iran could be backing the Shia. Everyone's got something to play. It's a proxy war with a lot of outsiders involved, mixed with a homegrown insurgency of native Iraqis. So it's very difficult to pinpoint who got what piece, but I know that the weapons are pretty sloppily taken into inventory. They're pretty sloppily managed, and many of the Iraqi Army and police who were former members of Ba'ath's party were put out of jobs, and they had weapons, and that helped turbocharge the amount of fighters and weapons on the ground over there.
Now, the general feeling from the Iraqi military forces, they still seem to be loyal to a religious faction, to the old Saddam regime, or were they putting on fronts?
I don't think that Iraqis view themselves as Iraqis. It's an artificial figment of the Western imagination. There's Sunnis and Shia, there's Kurds. Nobody swears allegiance to Iraq first, or very few people. Loyalties and bloodlines are tribal. They go back thousands of years, much earlier and much deeper than the loyalties to the country of Iraq. So you'll see where the Kurds are trying to hold down the area with oil, and now it's a big land grab for jobs in Baghdad. The Shiites control the city demographically, and they control the jobs, and a lot of the Sunnis now that are out of work, the U.S. is bringing them on payroll as to have them fight off insurgents or patrol their streets. So we're paying some of the militias. We're just calling them CLCs, which is called Concerned Local Citizen. We've rebranded the name militia.
Now, what kind of influence did the religious mullahs have over there? Were they helpful? Were they hostile?
It's a tricky game. A lot of everything's run by the sheikhs. One of the sheikhs I dealt with was one of the most prominent sheikhs in Baghdad. He had, when you think of a tribe, some people think, well, 800-900 people. He had approximately 1 million members of his tribe. He had most of the top Iraqi army and police officers beholden to him. So they could be tricky characters. Some days they're your friends, and some days you had to recognize who they were and act accordingly. And that's when they would sometimes get tipped off and take a little disappearing act in Iran. The reality was that the sheikhs rule everything over there. It's all religious control. And that trickles down and separates the population. I know that some of the sheikhs that publicly spoke out against us because they had to keep popular support were the same ones I met in backdoor office deals and handed piles of cash to them and their friends to fix a school that may or may not get fixed, or do something in order to generate cash flow in that region to keep that sheikh happy, because at the end of the day it's all just a gentleman's form of bribery over there.
Were there occasions when you saw Iraqi military forces who supposedly were assigned to help you turned out later to have been mutilated, murdered by the population over there?
The story I told you earlier, which was at humanitarian mission, one of the things that happened to us is when we drove down the other end of that checkpoint, about 400 or 500 meters down, we drove through another checkpoint with the Iraqi army pointing at our blown-up truck as we were driving on the rims, laughing at us. We had such a mixed feeling. There were people that genuinely put their lives on the line and they were executed. I worked with 4 neighborhood council members personally that were executed in the year that I was there. Some of them were executed as collaborators with us. Some were executed because they weren't they fell out with some of the religious leaders. Not necessarily because they were working with us, but maybe they didn't give enough of their share of the money that they got from their contracts from the U.S. They didn't give enough of the money over, so somebody got cute and killed them. The translators that got killed were usually the translators that got killed because they genuinely believed in the mission. They supported the U.S., they wanted to help us out, and they wanted a free and modern Iraq. My interpreter was 27 years old. His life was always threatened. His family's life was always threatened. He had to move his family from month to month from all over different parts of Baghdad just to keep him from getting killed. So there was a wide spectrum. And most of the good people, especially the young people that can make a difference in Iraq, many of them are trying to leave Iraq and they're going through Jordan and coming to the U.S. because they want to get out. They want a better life for themselves and their families. And Iraq to them is not a place they can believe in.
On the news, we see from time to time suicide bombing, what happened over there. Did you ever come upon a scene where that had happened?
No, I seen executed bodies. I was there when they got executed. We were under a bridge. We thought we were getting attacked. We drove up on the side of the bridge and pulled basically a flanking maneuver on the side of the road with them. Approached the vehicle very slowly because we didn't know if it was a bomb. Those were executed folks. I cleaned out a gun truck with a kid that's got his legs blown off inside the truck. And I got to see some of, and not all of, the brutality and the savagery over there. Remnants of a kid cooked in a truck is a pretty heartbreaking, disgusting, gruesome thing to bear witness to. And it's just another one of those things that you gotta really learn how to tuck away.
Mm-hmm. Now you say how the young people were trying to leave Iraq and come to the United States. So in other words, those people look favorably toward the United States. And are they able to easily leave? I mean, you say they go through Jordan and all that?
It's a huge process. They have to serve as a Turk for a while. They got to get recommended. It's a long, difficult process, but a lot of them get through. Unfortunately, the Turks, we call them interpreters, just like the doctors and dentists and everybody else. Most of the educated people that Iraq needs to keep, to stay, to become a new country and heal are leaving. And the people that are standing fast and holding on are the wrong people. We're keeping the bad people there, and the good people are leaving.
How strong is the Islamic religion over there, and do they have a mission of conversion?
Militant Islam is stronger there than it was under Saddam. Saddam was relatively secular, and Iraq was relatively secular by Middle East standards. It is becoming a more radicalized city, Baghdad. In the year alone I was there, they would have signs out there saying no alcohol, no partying, no loud music, publicly displayed posters with the threat of reprisal, attacks on family if they were found with alcohol. They would target some of the stores with suicide bombings where they knew they were bootlegging booze. I'm not sure of their goal or agenda to convert people over there. I dealt with predominantly a Muslim population, and I don't really sense how that fed into the U.S. soldiers' population. I just think that Iraq was becoming, the area in Baghdad was becoming more radicalized under very powerful Shiite mullahs in my area. There were Sunni populations as well, but my experience was mostly with the Shiites.
What was the general feeling of your comrades there? Did they feel that they were doing something worthwhile, or did they think it was futile?
There was always somebody that thought that they could make a difference. I was with people that were, a lot of them were on the second, third tour, and victory was coming home in one piece and keeping your buddy alive. I think the overall higher meaning, the higher purpose, the higher mission stuff, that started to get weighed out of the equation very quickly after the exposure to the population and understanding what we're getting into. We realized we're a very young country dealing with very old people, very old culture. And I saw less and less people that ideally believed they were there to really feel like they were part of an important purpose. And I think the name of the game just started becoming stay alive.
Now, were there certain things that they expected you to do over there? We know that they said, you mentioned no alcohol.
Yeah.
What about food? Were there certain things that you could not eat over there, or?
No, you could eat pork there. U.S. DFACs and soldiers serve pork. We were just not allowed to drink alcohol. We weren't allowed to have pornography. There was a ban on sex as well, unless you were married, and there were very few people that were married that had their wives with them in a military arrangement. Every once in a while, the wife would be somewhere on the base and they could meet sometime. But it was no alcohol, no sex, obviously no drugs, quote drugs. And you were basically expected to just maintain good order and discipline, I think is the name of the game. They were very pretty crazy about uniforms. I mean, you could come back from a patrol in 130-degree heat, and you came back and your sleeves would roll up, you'd have a sergeant major yelling at you for your uniform being out of line. One of the times, as I said, when we got in the ambush, when we talked about rules of engagement and escalation of force, when we came back, instead of a major saying, well, are you all right? Did you see a doctor? And getting us checked out because, somebody might have had TBI, someone might have had a concussion or internal trauma. The first thing we did was get put back into a room and told to basically defend our actions. Why did we shoot back at them? Why did we respond that way? One of the 50 cal gunners that killed the guy with a weapon was asked how he knew the intent of the guy with the weapon. And then we just realized we're in a bizarre situation where officers and high enlisted, a lot of people are going to be playing politicians and try to get their promotions, but you're not going to have people coming up to you saying, are you okay? How's your family? Are you getting your mail? Are you getting paid? You are going to come back from a firefight and get told to defend every decision you made in split-section reaction. And if you don't, then every other week you're seeing some other kid being brought up on charges or tried in the newspaper. The name of the game was, how do you keep you guys alive when you got a hand tied behind your back? And as you can understand, the enemy is everywhere and all the time, everywhere, on any rooftop, any alleyway, any window. It could be anybody walking by you in that marketplace. Any person could be the person that's the last person you see before you get killed. So that's kind of a tough line to walk. A year that is a lot to experience, absorb, and process. And then, of course, when you come home, you've got to reconcile with yourself.
Now, did you, you must have been very tensed up. Were there ever times you could rest and relax anywhere?
When I came back to the base, you could have boredom, you could relax, you could get your meal, you could share with your buddies, They said, hey, would you do what you did again? Yeah, I mean, I don't say I wish I never went to Iraq. I think I did what I had to do when it was time to do it. I don't know what that means, but it meant something to me. We would play basketball on a little basketball court. We would listen to music, play our laptops. We had a TV in our little room. We had a CD player. I mean, we made the most of what we had, and we would use the computers, we would use the phones. So we had a lot of things to do to keep ourselves, try to kind of fight off the loneliness and fight off the boredom. And so we tried to make the most of things that we could do and enjoy, and to get our mind straight, or to get our mind relaxed on the next time we had to go out, basically.
So you're not having the trouble with these service people with illegal drugs and alcohol in this war like some of the others
I
may
don't
have
think
been?
so. I only heard of a few instances, personally knew the people that got brought down to get their rank and pay taken out. I was there when it happened to them. They had to go down, I think, Liberty, and they found alcohol in their mail, and the FBI was there. They were in the office and they showed up, and I just thought it was surreal to see the FBI in Baghdad, you know. But at the end of the day, kids are going to break, kids are going to have problems, they're going to abuse prescription drugs, they're going to try to basically self-medicate in that environment, depending, not everyone, but plenty of us never did anything illegal and never self-medicated anything other than what a doctor allowed us to. And I just think that, you know, we had some problems, but it wasn't like we were all drunk and high running around out there.
Were there occasions when you felt that you didn't have support or a feeling of abandonment?
By like a chain of command? Or,
Yes.
I routinely and regularly distrusted the chain of command. After the 16 country, the first time we had that incident, I routinely felt like it was us 20 guys versus the world. There were some good people out there at the top, but most of them, in my mind, would throw their soldiers under a bus to get the next promotion. And I always felt like it's us against the world, and we have to get our story right and make sense, because they're going to beat the snot out of us when we get home, when we get back after this ambush or firefight or mission. And we are going to have to be accountable and defend every single thing we did.
Do you feel that the American press has been a problem with that?
I don't think the American press has released the types of stories that I'm talking about right now. They have left and right, and everyone's got an agenda, and some people say all is rosy, and I can show you statistics. And if you ever want to be part of a very manipulative, disoriented environment, then spend all your day looking at statistics or regurgitating statistics, because they don't tell you what's going on. So the press doesn't always give us a good shake based on the accomplishments we've made, but the reality is many of the accomplishments are so highly politicized and manufactured that when we say something's happening, other than how many deaths are reported, people don't really get what's going on behind the scenes, the type of acquiescence, the types of deals we had to make, the things we did to keep those streets safe, that the American public would be either disgusted, surprised, or ambivalent about.
Were there occasions, well, what I'm trying to get at is now is there were moments when you could have religious service conducted over there. Did it have to be done in a closed atmosphere?
No. Soldiers were routinely allowed to pray, get access to prayer. There was chaplaincies. I never really sensed that type of discouragement, other than we're supposed to be politically savvy when we engaged in the population. If we were there on a fast, like during Ramadan, we weren't supposed to just open up and eat food right in front of them at a meeting. If we had to sip something, maybe that's okay. But we had to be culturally sensitive to them. But we were also allowed to religiously pursue what we were trying to pursue, I guess is how I would put it.
On your daily living, how do they provide meals for you there?
It's an Army barrack. We had an Army kitchen run by local nationals, run with the help of local nationals. So Iraqis would come out of the base, they'd walk through the metal detectors, get screened, and then they would help serve food. Some of them stayed on the base, lived on the base with us, and some of them just lived out into town, and they came on every day to work, or they would stay on the base. And that's what we depended on for some of the services.
There were no occasions when you feared that the food might be tainted?
No, we did have some of the nationals arrested and because they were stealing thumb drives and intelligence. So some of the guys we knew were bad, and we found out they were bad, and they were escorted off the base or something like that. Some of the local nationals could grow on you. Sometimes people felt like they could trust them. Again, I always felt like any given night they go home, no matter how much you like them, somebody in their neighborhood could say, if you don't walk here with a bomb or you don't try to steal one of those laptops, I'll kill your brother. And if you don't keep that type of mentality, you let down that sense of trust, if you let that lead you, it could be the last stupid decision you make. Again, we would have guys walk through that were very cool with us. We knew for a long time, 6 months, hey, come on. No. Go through the screen, do your thing, let that guy check you out. And he's got a job to do. And don't forget that until you walk on this side of the screen, you're just another guy in the street to me. And you had to have that mentality, unfortunately, as well.
How was morale over there, and especially waiting for mail from home, and also news from what was going on at home, access to what was going on the TV networks at home?
We had TV, we had computers, we had so much access to what was going on. It was so real time. We had mail that would get sent that would be in our hands after it was sent from the U.S. within 7 to 10 days. I mean, we had so many things that they never had in previous wars. And so it was kind of a dichotomy of loneliness but immediacy. To be able to call, email people you love and care about is it's nice to have that, but it's also the dichotomy of it reminds you you're somewhere else and you're far away from them. So it was kind of a dichotomy.
Mm-hmm.
Were there occasions when you yourself saw some of the politicians from the United States come over, or new military officers come over there, and there was a change in the procedure that you found yourself operating under?
Routinely, objectives and priorities changed on a regular basis. They changed like underwear over there. I met some of the department people, State Department, that came over. I met some of the congressmen. Some were okay. Most of them view soldiers as statistics and platitudes. They don't have a real connection. If you don't have a son or a daughter in harm's way, I think it's very easy to be distant from the military. Congress people I looked at, most of them looked like they had zero connection to what was going on with us. They did meet and greets, handheld, photo ops. The State Department people, I felt the relationship there was very broken between the military command and the State Department, and they were not on the same page. And the State Department seemed very just politically charged and out of touch with reality. For an example, they sent us a State Department representative to travel with us to work with internally displaced people and to come up with a plan to deal with them. And my feeling was, we're 5 years into this war, and we still have guys trying to figure out what's going on with internally displaced war people. I thought that should have been part of the planning stages. I certainly thought it should have been something that occurred very quickly after occupation. I certainly had no idea that 5 years later they'd send out guys that were trying to either reinvent the wheel or start from scratch. I found that very troubling, as to realize that some of the highest levels have little to no idea what's really happening here day in and day out.
Now, were there occasions when you had a break where you could go to and participate in R&R, and what kind of areas would they have available for you?
They had something called leave, a 4-day pass. Leave was 2 weeks, and that's when I went home. A pass was, you could either go to Freedom Rest, which was a hotel in Baghdad, and pool and everything else, if they had the room allowed, and then a pass also to Qatar, which was an air base. I guess it was an air base. I never went there, but many of the other people I was with went there, where they could actually have, I think, 2 drinks maximum a day and enjoy themselves. So their R&R would be Qatar, or Qatar, and then there was also another leave place, leave and Freedom Rest in Baghdad. I never got leave. We never had that because there was no slots available. R&R I got, which was my 2 weeks when I went back to the States.
Now, do you think that was good to come home for 2 weeks and then was hard to go back?
I was originally gonna either go to Israel or Thailand when I first came over. And then after the first couple times, we got into some skirmishes and firefights and ambushes and so forth. I realized I don't know if I'm going to see my family again. I want to see them. I never quite clicked in until that happened that this could be, this is the real deal, and at any given time it could be the end of the line. So I saw them, and it was surreal to come home. It was surreal to see Americans in America kind of moving on, doing its own thing, and to realize that we're in our own little place, in our own little space, and America's going to move on and do what it's got to do. So it's kind of like culture shock, and then they go back into Baghdad, and the night you come home to hear another bomb in the sector where 4 kids got killed, you'd start to hear, wow, we've really got to look out for each other and keep America out of your mind right now, and family in terms of emotionality. Because if your head's not in the game on that patrol, you're not going to get to see him again.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how I viewed it.
So that must be why so many people in other countries are trying to come to the United States to live, because we have a much better life.
So many people complain about America. In fact, so many Americans complain about America. And I said, you take it for granted that the water runs out of the faucet clean and drinkable, that they can't routinely, regularly come in your house and execute your family members. The freedoms you have, you take for granted, and you can't imagine what it's like to be in a chaotic environment like that and see how women are treated, how brutal people are being treated, ethnic minorities, with gender. And if you ever see that, you'd realize, America's not perfect, but it's got a lot over many other countries in the world. And I think a lot of people forget that, and they either take that for granted or they don't give it what its proper course as well.
What was the emotional feeling like for you and your comrades as the tour got closer and closer to the 1 year period?
You feel like your luck ran out, and you want to stay off the street as much as possible. You want to avoid stupid patrols you shouldn't have to do. The scariest ride, or one of the scariest rides I was on, was that last ride, convoying down to Baghdad to take my flight home. As that tour winds down, you get very concerned about the idea of getting home, and it strikes you, and then you just count your days and you hope that you don't run out of luck, and that's all you're running on. If you're outside every day, if you're on the bases, maybe you got a different mentality, maybe you're still worried about a mortar attack or something, but you probably have a different sense of excitement and less of a sense of fear on your last days. There's guys who are out there all the time, and there's plenty of people, like I said, did much more stuff than we did, than I did, but we did a garden variety soup to nuts thing. We participated on raids, we ran a lot of patrols, we got to see garden variety what was going on out there. So as our tour winded down, a sense of mortality and fragility really started to come to the surface, and you just plain didn't want to go outside that wire anymore, any more than you had to, because your goal was to get home alive completely without anything happening, obviously.
How did you arrive back to the States?
I came back to the States, to Bragg. We were there for about a week. We did all our processing. I flew into Albany Airport and got in around 12 o'clock at night. We were all kind of individuals, just kind of released back into our little places and going home. And so I just thought it was a funny story. I was still in uniform coming home, and I got selected for additional screening on that second. They said, "Excuse me, sir, we need you to come over," and he got selected for additional screening. So I thought of the irony of coming home and then being one of the people that got selected for this additional screening. And just it was just like, to me, it was, I can see the humor in it. But I think the name of the game is, for anybody, is don't be afraid to reach out. under doctor's care, take whatever medicine, get whatever therapy you need to survive, to not become another statistic. Don't try to fight all those things in your head alone. Don't be afraid to reach out. There's nothing tough about killing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's nothing macho about suicide. I'm saying that because I can see a lot of guys are coming home broken, in bad shape, and they don't reach out, and they're afraid to reach out. And so those are some of the things that I recommend and encourage people. You know, there's a lot of slaps in the face that are going to happen when you get home. You're just going to see in America that you didn't see the way you saw before you left. You might view Americans very different. You might view America as very different than how you view it now, as someone that put your life on the line. So try to deal with the culture shock as much as you can. Try to get as much help as you can, and try not to let all those things push your buttons and get you go that you can take for granted. Because there's many Americans that remember the name of the person who won American Idol a week ago, and they can't remember one name of a soldier killed in Iraq. And you're going to have to remember that and keep that in mind, because if you don't keep that in perspective, it's going to be one of the many things that can really get at you when you come home.
Now, did you find coming home, have you found a lot of people saying things against you for going over or not?
I find that it's popular to say support our troops, and it's a bumper sticker, but the reality is most people that say they support our troops have not, that I've seen, when I ask them, have you donated any time or money to a veteran's cause, they haven't. So I'll find that sometimes the support our troops is just the sanctimonious moral high ground, so that they can then go off on some personal attack or some attack about the military. So I find that to be kind of a very thin veneer. The people that really give their time and money, those people help us over there, and they help us over here. And I can't say enough about those people. And they're sometimes very anonymous people. They just send over packages to a group, or they'll help out with Wounded Warrior or some organization, and they don't go off on some tangent about how much they do. They just do it.
And what were the types of things that you all enjoyed receiving in packages, and did you share them? Or?
Yep. Any home-baked goods, chocolate, anything that, you know, you could get a lot in the PX, but there were certain specialty foods back home you couldn't get. And, you know, even CDs that you could get, you know, favorite series of movies. I watched Seinfeld, Family Guy, The Simpsons, anything that helps pass the time. And then just the fact that somebody sends you a handwritten note that says, you know, we're thinking about you, and that type of thing.
Now those, we were doing that with a group I'm in, and all of a sudden we were told they don't need any more packages, you've got to know a specific person, and you didn't. Is that true, or maybe it's different areas of the war that people...
I don't know. There may be some places that are getting more packages because the chaplains, or they know more people, or they're better connected.
Okay.
It's possible. As much as you can individually identify a soldier or the unit, know where it's going and that they're going to get it and share it, or, you know, enjoy it, that's great. Sometimes there's so many units moving so quick, some of the units are gone by the time those packages arrive, or they just get kind of shuffled along, and maybe there's just some units are getting a lot more on a big base, and some units are getting hardly anything. So I wouldn't discourage anyone from sending a package, but I think if you can find the specific unit or company you're trying to send it to, that would probably be more helpful and more appreciated.
Of the original group that you went over with, how many were able to come back with you?
I was fortunate, everyone came back, but some of the guys on the teams had some injuries from some of the bombs when they got hit. Most of them were just minor injuries. We had the up armored truck, so the lower end explosions were less likely to penetrate the armor. But there were guys I was with that I knew had some mental issues or behavior issues because of the attacks, and then they had some suffered some small shrapnel or smaller injuries, but thankfully most of the people that I was with came back, again with very minor injuries, largely due, thankfully, to the type and the threshold of the armor that we had on the trucks.
What brought you from Fort Bragg to Albany?
I moved to Albany a couple of years ago because I have family up here, and I liked the area. I just thought it was a beautiful area, and I was only here about 5 months before I got deployed, and then I came back here. I've been home since March, and thankfully I was able to land a job with the VA and come home and start working again.
So I guess in some ways your military experience has influenced your life now if you're working with the VA hospital.
Yeah, I'm working with the VA, and there's also a lot of great state programs out there, 55B, 55C for soldiers to help them get jobs. There's 500 slots the governor put aside in the state of New York, which are exempt from the hiring freeze, at least right now. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of programs out there, there's a lot of education out there, you just gotta know where to go. The VA, for me, it was a job that came through, and this is kind of where I'm at for right now.
Mm-hmm. And do you think you'll ever join up any of these military organizations that
Like VFW, American Legion?
I belong in the VFW, and I think every guy, one of the problems with the VFW is it's aging and dwindling, and young guys don't join. The reason I recommend it is because your money goes to help support the lobbying and fighting for veterans' rights and benefits. And right now, some of those benefits are there, but as the economy, I think, continues to have problems and companies get bailed out and jobs continue to go overseas, maybe these benefits won't be here indefinitely. So I think we need to stay involved with VFW, American Legion, actively involved, be vigilant, and just remember that we have to support groups, even if we don't go in there once a year. Support these groups and take it up and carry the torch. We carried the torch in the war, and now we need to carry the torch afterwards and support the VFWs and step up in leadership roles and try to get active in whatever civic functions we need to try to look out for our interests, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
From what you've seen by being over there and what you hear on the news now, do you think this is finally winding down over there?
I think we put all the smoke and mirrors into place that make it look like we can transition out of there, that we did what we're supposed to do. I don't believe structurally, fundamentally, we've done what we were supposed to do. We will probably continue to keep advisory teams for a long period of time over there, civil affairs, military, police, training teams. But I wish I could tell you that I got out of there feeling that fundamentally we had changed and improved the area, but I think we just kind of played a shell game, and we unfortunately, I don't think we've learned our lessons.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you very much for serving our country and trying to keep us free, and thank you for your interview.